Gene Granger is one of the premier historians on NASCAR racing and widely respected in the motorsports world. He has covered the sport since the 1950s for a variety of daily newspapers and national publications, and has compiled an extensive collection of statistics and references. Years ago, Gene met with seven-time NASCAR Winston Cup Series champion King Richard Petty, one of the greatest drivers ever with 200 victories and a string of records that most believe will never be broken. Here's an excerpt from that rare and revealing interview.
The deal about your dad winning the '59 Daytona 500, and Pal Parker said he didn't see why I didn't pursue it, and I don't know why either, but you know, you made mention several times that they finally had to give it to you. And then you also said that they had their mind made up. If there had not been any photographs or something like that, they wouldn't have, you indicated they wouldn't have given it to you. All right, what was the deal on that then? Why
they, at that particular time, they were real interested in trying to get Ford back in racing. And they thought that would generate, you know, interest in Ford, if Ford won the race.
Beauchamp had won it then.
Right.
And then he was driving a Ford.
Right, he was driving Thunderbird.
Right. All right, so that would have generated more interest in
presumably, that was the way that Big Bill looked at it.
All right, but I mean, it wasn't that he disliked Lee Petty?
No, that wasn't the deal. He was looking at it from a business standpoint. In other words, to him it didn't matter who won the race.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he couldn't care if Lee Petty or Joe Blow to won the race. The deal was that at that time, Holman and Moody were also very, very interested in getting Ford in it. So they wasn't really working hand in hand, but France knew what was going on and what Holman was trying to do, and they was all together trying to get Ford into racing.
Well, when did they get Ford back in now? Because they had been in earlier,
61,
right?
I think. When they made their commitment to get back in.
Yeah, I think about 2 years later, right? Oh, I see. Oh, that makes sense. And now, was there any hard feelings about Beauchamp after the wreck of '61?
No, he didn't have nothing to do with it. No. I mean, he was just driving the car, and it was a surprise to him, I think, that they gave him the race.
Oh, you mean they first gave it to him?
Right.
All right. And the thing you didn't tell us about, you told us it took only 15 minutes to fix your seat where you could run 174 mile an hour in 1964. Now, what did you do to the seat? You know, like you said, it was a regular old seat then.
We just put a deal on the side to hold me in the seat.
I know, you kept saying a deal. What kind of deal?
You know that crazy looking thing I got on the side of my seat now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was the Forerunner.
Was that
I'll tell you what it was. We took a 2x4 and wrapped it in with foam rubber and taped it on there. That's what we did.
All right, did you do this on both sides?
No, just on the right side.
See,
at that time we had a deal on your leg on the right side, but we didn't have anything on the top of the seat.
Mm-hmm. It'd keep you.
See, it was just a flat back, just a straight bucket seat. There was nothing back here. So when you go in the corner, you went over. So all we done was just taped on a piece of thing there, so that when I leaned against it, I had something to keep me from
So it was a 2x4.
So all it was a 2x4, but it was wrapped in tape and foam and everything. But it done the job. And then when we got back home, we built a stationary thing on it. And since then, everybody's got something.
Right, but that was a Forerunner. Had anybody, to your knowledge, done anything like that at that time to keep themselves from sliding over?
Nobody had it because nobody ever run that fast and had that much sling on the car.
Well, that's true. Because you said you were doing 168,
right.
And you went up 6 miles an hour just by keeping you from sliding over. So, and there's something you always say. Frequently use the word cat or cats when referring to people. Now, is this an easy way out? Remember, and still, I know
it's
you
an
mean
easy way out without having to name names.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, because you.
In other words, instead of me telling you, I say, okay, I got to outrun these cats. Instead of me telling you Pearson and Allison and all these cats every time.
Yeah, I see.
It's just a slang word that I use.
Right, but I was just wondering.
And referring to a group without having to name the group. I mean, if I say, okay, now, if I keep using Pearson or Allison or something, then you think I'm just picking on one man. Well, I'm not. But it's hard for me to just sit down and name 5 or 6 people, because I got to classify them, so I just call them cats.
Mm-hmm.
Just
like referring
group,
to motors
or I could use the word group or anything like it, but I just happen to use that
Yeah,
I don't know where I picked it up. That's just a slang.
No,
word that I
it's
picked up.
it's a good way out. And you know, after the Ford deal in '69, and you went back to Chrysler, who approached whom? As far as you and Chrysler, did you approach them, or did Ronnie Householder come back to you?
Well, it wasn't Ronnie, but they approached us.
They did approach
Right.
you. All right, and this is also what was Ford's reaction to you? Because you had an option that you could run, but I mean, you only had a
Didn't really make
year.
that much difference to them. In other words, they said whatever y'all want to do.
But they knew they were going to start cutting back. Going
Right.
71.
They already
I mean,
had,
70.
Undoubtedly, they already know what they was going to do, and we didn't.
Mm-hmm. And you think
So we never approached them for a 70 contract.
because you know they started cutting back in 70. Do you
Because
think?
we got to Daytona, everybody found out that they was going to cut the whole thing out.
Right.
So we never really approached them.
Do you think?
If Chrysler had known, then we would have never wound up with the Chrysler deal.
You think if they'd known that Ford was going to do that, they wouldn't have taken you?
No, if they knew Ford was pulling out, then they would have pulled out also. But see, they done made a commitment to run in 71.
Well, no, you had the
Or
only
70.
factory 70. See,
Well, what?
you're the only one that had the deal in 71. The only factory deal.
Okay, well,
And 70
did
days.
Ford run any in 70?
Yeah, they ran the year, but they cut back. See,
Right.
They started
okay,
cutting
right. And
the
then
dollars.
in 71 they cut completely out.
Right, right
Okay.
after Daytona,
Right.
they got out. But
So they knew what they was doing and we didn't.
So do you
know,
think if they knew they were going to stay and say if this had been 5 or 6 years earlier, though, that they would put up a protest about wanting to keep you and all that? I would think so.
I would have thought if they hadn't have been in a deal of cutting back, then I think they would have been more interested in staying where they was at. But the deal was they was going to cut some teams anyway. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if we was wanting to go, then these other people were more loyal to them than we were. In other words, you start at the back end. You know, we didn't have any seniority, so we should have been the first ones to go if they was cutting back.
Right,
Yeah.
right, because you
So
were the
then-
latest team, right? So that, but on approaching Chrysler and them approaching you, how did that go though? I mean, like you said, you explained the other one. It did pay off.
They just
but-
come back to us and you know, just asked us was we interested, and we said, well, what kind of deal you got? I mean, you know, we interested in anything going, and they made a process to tell us, you know, that they was coming with a Superbird and you know the whole deal and what they wanted to do. And so well, we were really interested in it. You know,
Mhm.
so.
But they did contact you
Right.
on the deal, and
Yeah,
that's
we didn't go
and,
back to them.
and the wing car there kind of helped make up your mind.
Do what?
Didn't I said the
Oh
wing
yeah,
car?
yeah. Because
kinda-
see, that's the reason we left in the first place, or the big
Right.
reason we left.
because they wouldn't let you run
They
the
wouldn't let me
Dodge.
run the Charger.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then I told them no. And that's,
Right, all right. It's often been said that the Talladega 500 boycott was the blackest day in all of racing history. Do you personally think so?
no. Why should it have been?
I
I
don't
mean, you know,
think so.
nobody was hurt. You know, I mean, now, some of the spectators were a little hostile about it, but as far as what would have been a bad day is if we'd went down there and raced and somebody got hurt. That would have been a black day. You know, but the way the thing worked out, the greatest thing that could have happened to Talladega is what happened. They got more publicity off of that than they would have ever accomplished if it hadn't happened. Because Talladega was not on the map, and that put it on the map.
Unquestionably.
You know what I mean? And
Indeed.
there you go. The deal is that if they had went ahead and run a race, and somebody had won it, and nothing had happened, it would have just been another race. But the way it was, it got play all over for 6-8 months. Well, it still gets sun, but it got some for a whole year there for 6 months that there was no way that they would have got any. It might have been adverse publicity, but it was still let people know where Talladega, Alabama was at.
And that's the reason you
So-
have to question when he says it cost him $500,000 in publicity, he more than made it.
If it cost him $500,000, he made $3 million off the publicity of it.
Right.
In other words, there's no way that it cost him any money. He made money. In other words, what he should have done, he should have paid us for doing it. And if he'd have thought about the dadgum idea, he'd approached us in having us do it. Now, I guarantee you.
And you know, what he uses that $500,000 figure is saying, well, our purses would be higher today But the unfortunate incident, the way he referred to it as late as Labor Day, you know,
Well, I
when
mean,
he had a
what
press
did
conference.
it cost him? He paid off just exactly like what was going on. The same people was coming. You know, I mean, if he'd had 300,000 people, it might have been a different deal.
Mm-hmm.
But when you open a brand new doors on anything, you don't have a sellout crowd.
No, that's correct. Yeah, but I mean, he just used that
Well,
as a weapon, though, as say that's the reason our purses aren't higher than they are today, because that unfortunate incident. That's his words.
One race don't make you or break you any way you go.
No, you expect
That don't make the purses or break the purses. If
well,
it did, we'd be.
I think when you open a new track, you do expect to lose some money anyhow.
Right.
You got to.
I mean, I know he wasn't. Well, he might have been expecting to pay for it the first time. I don't know, but it hadn't proved out.
Well, you know, now conveniently on the next year, 4th of July, he just happens to get Ron Hudspeth of Atlanta Journal, the biggest paper in the South, and just happens to say that the boycott was Ford's fault. Now, you were a member of the Ford factory team in '69. What was your comment on that, blaming it
They
on
had
Ford?
nothing to do with it. And I mean, they was they didn't want us to leave.
Well, that was my next question. Did they try to
No.
pressure you
No,
or
they
anything
did not
to
want us to
stay?
leave. They said, you know, that they had too much invested and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But they said, what we're going to do. What they did, they got all the drivers together and talked to the drivers. Okay, they said, well, all these cats is ganged up on us. You know what I mean? Okay, then they turned right around and they said, okay, now all the car owners. Well, here I am, a driver and a car owner. They said, except you. So I went away. And really we had, you know, when Holman had that tractor and trailer, we all met up on top of that thing so nobody knew what was going on. I mean, you know, nobody could hear what was going on. So they had all the drivers up there and they talked to the drivers and the drivers said, well, we don't want to run. And they said, okay, so, you know, let's get the car owners up here. So they got all the car owners up there and they talked to them and all the car owners said, well, you know, we're going to want to go along with what our drivers want to do. And none of the car owners wanted to run either, because they knew that, you know, they could tear the car up, and you know they was probably more concerned than some of the drivers, you know, because of the way the tires and stuff.
But
but anyhow, Ford had nothing to do with it whatsoever. They tried to talk us into staying, and we just kept telling them we wasn't going to do it, and they finally said, okay, anybody wants to stay can stay. And anybody wants to leave can leave, and there'll be no reprisals. I mean, you know, it ain't going to help you or hurt you. Whatever you do, it's up to y'all. So that's the way they left it, and all of us went home.
Well, that's the main reason I never believed the story, because it was just too convenient to happen to have in your office and give a story when you got all these other guys been around, and Hudspeth just happens to be in Big Bill's office, and they just happen to break the story in the biggest paper in the South, you know.
But anyhow, it's
Yeah, well, it was no other
in other words,
motives
put it
to
this
it.
way, if Ford did have something to do with it, they manipulated me without me knowing it. And they manipulated the rest of the drivers without them knowing it.
Well,
because see, what happened, I mean, really what come about the whole thing was the people come to me. I mean, I tried to stay out of it. I told them, you know, they come up and they said, hey, this is bad. What can we do about it? And I said, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? So we talked to some of them, you know, and they said, well, if they don't come with a tire, we got to go home. And I said, okay. So then I called them all together and I said, what do y'all want to do? And they said, right down to, well, there was probably 5 or 6 of them that didn't want to go home. The rest of them, anybody that was running fast wanted to go home.
Right.
You know,
with good reason.
So we said, yeah. So
I
we said,
saw the
okay,
whole thing.
if that's the way y'all want to do it, that's the way we'll do it. And we told the others that if you want to run, you know, it's up to y'all. We don't want you to, but if you want to, that's, you know, it's still up to y'all. So everybody said, well, give us enough money to get home and we'll go.
All right, now, you know, Pearson, we were just talking to him the other night, like I was telling you, and and the 2 tracks that he don't like, you know, and then he spells it out bluntly. The one he hates the worst is Daytona, and the next one is Alabama, Talladega. All right, now you've said there's 3 that you don't like: Bristol, Darlington, and Talladega. Now I know you told me why Talladega, but why don't you like Bristol and Darlington? And I know you won on all these tracks.
Well, Bristol, I don't like it because it's so small. Well, I mean, it's a half-mile track, and it's not so small, but it's a half-mile track, and then you try to run mile speeds on it. And it's, you know, you're talking about, what, 33, 35-degree banks, and, you know, when you go out and run, all you see is banking. You can't really look very far ahead. And if anything happens in front of you, you just drive into it. There's no room for error. Absolutely none. And if anything happens, you're in it. And you're just very, very lucky to run the whole race and still have everything rolling.
Well,
and Darlington is the same way.
That's what I was getting ready to say. It's about the same way. There's no room for error.
That's the reason I don't like it. I like to run Darlington. Go down there by myself and run. Got the whole track. I really love to drive the racetrack. It's a challenge to drive the racetrack. So like running, say, Riverside or something. It's just a challenge just to go out there by yourself. And it's a challenge to run with other fast cars. But when you're running and you have to lap those cars and stuff, there's just not enough room for a fast car and a slow car. And on top of that, there's really not enough room for two fast cars either, or even two slow cars. And that's the deal. For some reason, that track, there's so much variation in the speeds of the cars, even more so than we do like running, you know, Daytona or someplace like it. There's not quite as much variation, but if there is variation, there's enough room at it. The slow cars don't bother you. They hardly ever get in your way. And I mean, you know, like if you're just running by yourself or drafting somebody, then the slow cars hardly ever get in your way. Now, if you come up to the last lap, one of them can mess you up or something like that. But like at Darlington, every time you come up on one, it's a challenge just to get around him without hitting him or hitting somebody. So that's the reason from that standpoint.
Well, in Talladega, you said more so there's circumstances.
Right, the track itself, you know what I mean, and all. It's just that it's just one of those things. I mean, you know, it's just, I just don't really look forward to going down there. I don't mind running the racetrack, but it just looks like it, you know, we've been over it before. It just looks like no matter what happens, something bad happens to somebody, either on the way there or the way back. Somebody in the infield might not even be connected with racing, but for some reason it's been that way. And we know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
No, when I was recapping it, I think it was, Cuckoo Marlin leaving the place out there, you know, where there's 20 lanes and all that, and lost his brakes and had his rig, the car on the trail and all, and went out there and was going to stop, and he didn't have no brakes and just kept going.
One of them deals.
Yeah, went off.
But you know, I mean, that ain't got nothing. You say, well, that's not got nothing to Talladega.
But when you start adding them up,
right? But if you start adding that up, and the cat that got shot in the infield, and the one that got run over by train out here, or
and the pickup truck that fell off the bank.
You add all that up, and you can't add that many to any of the rest of the racetrack. You can add a few, but nothing comparable to that. So that's you know, that's from that standpoint, you just don't feel at ease there.
Right.
I mean, the racetrack itself don't bother you because it's, of all the racetracks we run, there's more room on that racetrack than any racetrack we run.
Yeah.
So you would think it would be, you know, just because it's bigger doesn't make it unsafe. It makes it safer because it is bigger.
Well,
from that standpoint.
It's just like I was telling you, like Bob Myers. This is the writing in. That's the reason we say it's spooky too. Bob Myers, emergency appendectomy. Bill Kaiser, PR man, that was taken to the emergency thing over in Pell City, and then all of a sudden I got bursitis in my shoulder, which I never had bursitis.
Isaac down there had to go to the hospital. I mean, you know, he could have done that anywhere. No big deal. I had a boy work for me while he was down there. He had to go to the hospital for kidney stones. He could have done it at Darlington, or wouldn't have never thought nothing about it for him.
I mean, what is your favorite track? And what would you count as a number one track or number two?
Really, you know, I look forward to going to most all of them. It's like I told you, there's just a couple, three I just don't look forward to.
The rest of them, though.
Right. Bristol, I just flat detest that place. Now, the Darlington and Talladega, I can survive it. I mean, you know what I mean. I don't really look forward to going, but I don't mind going.
Oh, I guess the little thing that happened to you last
Daytona,
time there.
Going to Daytona, or going to Martinsville, or Wilkesboro, or Nashville, or, you know, California, or anywhere. I look forward to going.
What actually happened to Bobby Myers? You were right too. It was 57 Southern 500, but it was an O's, but it wasn't a convertible though. I mean, it was what y'all had some tops that y'all put on.
It was the 500 race.
Yeah, right. But I mean, you at that time used cars where you took the tops up, bolted the top on it.
Okay,
take it off. Because there's only like 17 laps in the race. Is that about, or 27 laps?
Let's see.
It was early in the race, right?
Fonny was driving Herb's car. Herb had a black Pontiac.
That's right. I've forgotten about that. And he did.
Okay, and he spun and was setting right over the tunnel as you go in the number 3 corner.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, black car on black asphalt, and the sun shining,
Oh my
and he just
goodness.
run head on into it. And that, you know what I mean? That's
Well, how many?
see, Fonny had spun somewhere down the backstretch, and that's where he'd ended up, against the wall, right before you get to the tunnel, I guess, or right at the tunnel. And it was like say he was headed back that way.
And like then, it was even
Bobby
worse than
never
it is
seen it.
today. You know, I mean, you got more room today up there than you did then.
Well, yeah, but still, yeah, he just
He never-
he never seen the car because he hit him. He was still going.
Was there any other cars involved in it, or did anybody else ever?
Goldsmiths got in on it. It was 4 or 5 cars from the time it wound up.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, as I said, that one fatality in 30 years is, you know, considering y'all been around, it's fantastic percentage.
One of those things, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a fantastic percentage when you consider that, you know, y'all started before roll bars, inner liners, fuel bladder, and everything. That's an incredible
From
record.
49 through the day. So.
Yeah, so that is really, and
That's
with the super
I mean, you know, you're
speeds,
talking about
ain't no telling.
1,300 races probably.
Yeah, because you
See,
yourself.
I've run over 700 myself.
Yeah, and you've already well over 100,000 miles of competition,
Oh yeah.
plus all the practice and qualifying, and I didn't tell them how many. But what effect did that have on petty engineering, if you know, at that particular time? Y'all were
Well, it's been a pretty good while. None that I can, you know what I mean. I mean, that's, you know, what can you do in a situation like that? I mean, that was in '57,
Mhm.
and then in '58, Bobby drove some for us.
This was Bobby.
I mean, Billy.
Billy. Yeah, Billy drove.
Then Billy drove for it. In fact, he won a couple of 3 races for us running in the convertible circuit.
Right, and Billy.
Me and Dale would take the convertible with Billy driving it, and Dad'd go off and run the Grand National
Billy had
somewhere.
a heart attack, didn't
And yeah, he finally died at Winston, running a sportsman race over there one night.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He went down in one of the corners and just went straight. And when they got to checking, found out he'd had a heart attack and died. I mean, you know, he didn't get. He died in a car, but he didn't get killed in the
That's
car.
sort of like what Speedy Thompson.
Right.
when
He
was running.
died of a heart attack. When they got to
attack.
checking, see, they couldn't see no marks or nothing. They couldn't figure out. And when they give it sort of autopsy deal, they found out that he'd had a heart attack and killed him.
Well,
He just went.
one thing that got me about Myers though is the number 4. Is there any significance to that? You know, I'm on these numbers.
Not really. We had
Since the
42. We just marked
40.
the 2 off and run 4. I
Well,
guess.
hey, that's
I mean,
and the way y'all come about these numbers.
well, they really don't mean a whole lot. I mean, you know, mine means a lot, and Daddy's meant a lot to him.
All right. This question, I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask you anyhow. Have you ever been scared in a race car?
And they be answering that, didn't
Well,
you know the answer.
no, but I mean, I'm thinking you're gonna say if you are, then it's time to get out. That's what you guys
I never
usually
have.
say.
I never have yet. I'll put it that way.
Never have yet.
Yeah.
All right. And then again, you know, you often asked about retirement because you've won just about everything there is to win. And your comments on that, and I know they'll be brief.
They got a 30 race schedule coming up this year, and I ain't won every one of them 30 races.
You want to win every one of them?
I've never won a single one of them myself.
Okay.
Because they just now been put on the schedule. So that's.
All right. Well, I asked.
Take that.
I asked not Dale, Wade a while ago, and about Riverside. You know, he said, "Hey, we might not even go." I said, "Yeah, All right. No, you know, you have had a hearing problem over all these years of racing. What is your condition as far as that goes? I mean,
I had a hearing problem when I was a little bitty boy.
Oh, it did it start when you were born?
I never have been able to hear good. So I
What,
don't
both
know
ears
that the
or-
racing has made it any better or any worse.
Well, that's why next question was, what did the doctors think? Have you have?
Well, they say don't go around loud noises.
Oh, I mean, they told you this when you were a kid too.
Well, no, they just said I couldn't hear good.
Uh-huh.
But at that time, they didn't know that much about what was going on, and I could hear good enough to get by in school and everything else, so really didn't pay that much attention to it. And you know, in the last 4 or 5 years, I think it's got worse. Definitely got worse.
Well, that could have been because of age.
Well,
too.
everybody. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Everybody's does. But
Mhm.
the man just told me. He said you got ears like a 100-year-old man. And you're 39 years old, but your ears is 100 years old.
Is it both ears or just one?
Both of them.
I mean, do you have
Lost
no
about
problem?
75% of my hearing.
You mean you only got 25% of your hearing right now? Boy, you'd never know it.
But that's according to their
Yeah.
gauges and stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They put you in that
I've
little
been-
room and
I've been
talk
through
at
it.
you and all that kind of stuff. But the noises I can't hear are mostly like shriller sounds. Anything that's real flat, I can hear okay.
Hmm. That's the reason you have a little problem with the telephone then.
Right. But you get people that talk with high pitched talk and stuff. As long as everybody's got a voice like mine, I can understand it because
Mhm.
it's a low pitched deal. I can understand pretty good.
Well, I mean, do they say that one day you're gonna go deaf, or they
No,
don't?
they didn't say anything about that. They said there wasn't nothing they could do except give you hearing aids. And I put on them hearing aids, and I hear so many dead gum sounds I ain't never heard before. I just get nervous, and I just take them off and lay them back.
Oh, I tell you, we play.
I told them, I said, man, if I've got by this long without them, and as long as I can make things meet, I ain't gonna worry about it.
Yeah.
Went through human adjustment.
Yeah.
Right, you make adjustments to it. See, I halfway read lips and stuff like that. And also, a lot of times, I'm carrying on a conversation with somebody, I might not catch every word,
But you get the gist of it.
but I get the gist of it, and that's all
Yeah,
that's all
right.
anybody says anything for anyway. The is and ands and uts and buts and stuff is just to make it flow smooth. I mean, you could leave out half your words and get the same message over, but somebody way down the line that started teaching English and teaching talking, had to throw in all these is, as, buts, and all that jazz, which you don't really need. We could do away with 2/3 of our talking and get just as much done.
Well, that's true. That's the reason they teach you speed reading and all now. that
Right, you just hit
yeah.
every line now and then and get the
And
gist
really-
of it. That's all you're gonna wind up with. That's all you're gonna remember.
Yeah. And it's really easier to read that way.
Right.
I think you absorb more than you do if you,
You
read
do
every
because
line.
you take it in. You just see half as much, but it's easier to take in that way.
Mm.
You don't overcrowd.
Yeah, maybe that's the reason my kids like the soap operas, because see, they can take off, from school.
Oh, you can miss
and then
it.
They come
You
back.
can-
They
You can miss it a week and still come back
Yeah,
that way.
and they'll pick up where they left off. I think maybe that's what it's all about. It's a lazy way of doing it
I
too.
listed all FIL and came right back to it.
Some things don't do much for me.
All right, and then part on about you probably have more a private life today than you had before you had the new home, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know where I live.
Yeah.
But the main deal is, as people come here, if I wasn't here, they just wander across the yard.
Mm-hmm.
But now when they drive up to a house somewhere else, they're not as likely to get out and wander around.
And you got a gate over there too.
Well, that helps.
Yeah. how many acres you got over? I didn't even ask you that. You got,
Right at 400 acres. Something like that.
where you living now? But you're not using all of it. I mean, was it those cows and all yours,
Mhm.
or is that cattle or what? What kind?
Black Angus.
Black Angus. How many head you got?
I don't know, about 30, 35, I think.
Oh, you raise them and sell them, or you just
Well, I just piddle around.
just fiddle around?
Yeah,
you have a garden
Well,
or
we
a
get-
farm over there or
They're
anything?
fixing now. We're pasturing in another 50 acres that we didn't have. Right now I got probably got about 80 acres pastured in now. And we're fixing another 50 acres from pastured in. You just do a little at a time. It's no big hurry. I ain't trying to make a living out of it.
No, I mean, you don't
Just
do it-
piddling around.
Do you do any farming, or you just have a garden over there, or what?
Well, we raise some small grain and some corn and stuff to feed the cows.
But you don't do any of this.
No, we're not doing it to sell it or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We do it for our own benefit. Just piddling around.
And you know, one thing that Pal Parker and I both noticed when we were over at your house, so that you know, your success and all doesn't appear to have spoiled any of your children, and you know, and the things and all they have. So you know, that's quite
Well,
impressive.
I don't know
really.
that it does or it doesn't,
Well, it
because I don't know
doesn't
how
appear
they'd
to
have
be.
been if we hadn't have been who we are. You know, but no, I think they take it real good. In other words, they
you
don't
would-
exploit it.
But that's what I mean. They,
That's-
they don't
yeah.
come on like, you know,
No, they don't say,
big
"Hey,
in-
I'm Richard Petty's son."
No,
or
we're big
daughter,"
in the
or something like
business.
that.
No, that's what I'm saying. That,
Well,
it
we try to
doesn't-
play it down as much as we can, and one of the big advantages I think they have is by being in a small place, and also being where I come from.
Mhm.
In other words, if we moved to another small place, it'd still be a big deal. But Linda and myself both went to school at Randleman.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? We've always lived here. We've not moved in. You know, and so that makes them really part of the community. Also, they don't not standoffish. I mean, it's not like a new crowd moved into
Right.
to some place. These are the same old crowd that's always been here. They went to school they went to kindergarten with the same kids they're going to high school with or something. You know.
And I
so
say there's definite
Yeah.
advantage in that. I really believe
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I think they I
yeah,
think
the
they
only
learn a
thing
lot.
they give Kyle a pretty hard time, I think, when he goes off to play ball and stuff like that. You know, they kind of harass him a little bit.
Well,
He goes along pretty good.
well, I was getting ready to say he seems to be
Yeah,
mature beyond his years.
I
really,
guess
in
it
that
bothers. I
respect.
guess it bothers him, but he just trucks right along. Because
Well-
he don't want to be known. He wants to be known as Kyle Petty, not Richard Petty's son. I mean,
Yeah.
he's not interested in what Richard Petty does. He's interested in what he does, and that's the main thing.
That's sort of like you didn't want to be known as Lee Petty's son.
Right,
You
it's-
want to be known as Richard
Right.
Petty.
That was me. I'm an individual, and
All right,
I want all them to be. And
yeah.
so far, they are.
Has he changed any in far as racing goes? I mean, is he still in that stage that we talked about 6 months ago?
Still in limbo.
Still in limbo. Okay. What do the girls? I never have asked you. What do the older girls want to do?
They just trucking along too.
I guess trucking along.
I think the oldest one said the only thing I've ever heard her say, she said she might want to be a teacher, but who
Mhm.
knows?
Well, how active are the girls in your racing? I mean, do they play any role in it?
Well, my oldest girl scores a lot. Yeah,
yeah,
likes
that's
that.
right.
Yeah, Sharon, she gets all excited. She just tickles her to death to get to be part of it,
Mhm.
and that's the only way she can feel like it. She can be part of it is score. So she gets every time she goes to race, she goes and scores, and she thinks she's really doing a good job,
Mhm.
and she does. I mean, you know what I mean. But she feels like she's part of it that way. The
Mhm.
little one, she could care less actually.
Well, if I recall correctly, wasn't it Sharon that got a story of her own in the paper on that deal at Atlanta, where you won?
Oh yeah, about the scoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was the only one that
About
had the
two-
right score. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, she got
Everybody in the pit was screwed up, and she said, "Daddy, now I didn't miss you a lap," and said, "This is the way it is." And I said, "Okay, sure." And that Ronnie and all them boys was arguing with her, and she said, "Daddy said I didn't put in no extra laps, and I didn't leave none out. So this is the way it is."